They say grief brings families closer. Whoever said that never met mine. Growing up in the Ellis estate was like living in a museum, cold, silent, and designed to look impressive from the outside. My father, Douglas Ellis, was a legacy man. His father built the estate. His grandfather named half the county. And he made sure I knew that I, Rowan Ellis, was nothing more than a dusty name in that lineage, one he'd rather skip over. He remarried when I was 10. Valerie was the kind of woman who knew how to pour tea and poison into the same cup without blinking. Sweet in front of guests, sharp in every private word. She didn't raise me. She reshaped the house around me until I felt like a guest. In my own home. Then came Sienna, my half-sister. All ribbons and praise, perfect report cards and birthday blowouts. She was everything I wasn't. Adored, accepted, entitled. While I stood at the edge of family photos, she stood in the center, hands on hips like she was born to inherit the world. But I didn't hate her. Not really. I hated what they did to me when they looked at her. What they didn't say when I cried. What they refused to see when I succeeded quietly. After college, I came back to care for Grandpa Ellis, the only one who remembered my birthday without needing a reminder. He was dying, but not of cancer. He was dying of being ignored, and I sat with him every night for 7 months, held his hand, helped him write letters, read him poetry. When he passed, I was the only one at his bedside. The next morning, they didn't ask how I was. They asked where the will was. Turns out, Grandpa had rewritten it, quietly, and left the entire Ellis estate, the house, the land, the antique furniture he'd polished every Sunday, to me. His quiet Rowan, as he used to say. That was the beginning of the end. Valerie didn't scream. She smiled, a tight, thin smile like she was recalculating. Douglas didn't argue. He dismissed it. That old man wasn't in his right mind. And Sienna? She just looked at me like I'd stolen something that was always supposed to be hers. For weeks, they tried to change it, claimed the will wasn't valid, claimed I manipulated him. Eventually, my father called me into his study. Dark-paneled, walls, leather chairs, the smell of scotch already in the air, and said, "There's nothing here for you anymore, Rowan. Maybe it's time you leave with whatever dignity you have left." I didn't respond. Just looked at the same fireplace where I'd once sat reading books he'd never noticed me finish. That night, I packed a single suitcase and walked out of the house I was supposed to inherit. No goodbye, no forwarding address, just gone. 1 month. Later, I was dead, at least according to them. A local blog posted the obituary. Rowan Ellis, 29, passed away during solo travel abroad, private memorial to be held. Valerie's quote read, "We'll remember her the way she'd want to be remembered, with grace and compassion. No missing persons report. No funeral open to the public. No attempt to reach out to my friends. They just closed the book." Watched it all unfold from a small apartment 2 cities over, rented under another name, paid for in cash. I had everything I needed, quiet, distance, and a contact on the inside. Brandt, Mr. Harold Brandt, Grandpa's old lawyer. He'd been suspicious from the start, and when I reached out in secret, he didn't hesitate. He kept me updated, fed me everything they tried to bury. And as I sat there sipping tea in a room where no one knew my name, I realized something strange. I wasn't angry. I was curious. "If I'm dead to them," I whispered, "I'll see what the living do with my name." And so I watched and waited. Dead girls don't read legal documents. At least that's what my father assumed when he filed a new will 6 weeks after my death. It was Mr. Brandt who found it first, buried deep in courthouse filings under a case number that didn't exist 3 months ago. A revised Ellis family trust, one that listed Douglas Ellis and Valerie Ellis as sole beneficiaries of the estate, and made no mention of me at all. "They didn't even bother changing the typeface," Brandt muttered, sliding the file across his desk toward me. "They're not just greedy, they're lazy." It was laughable, really. The original will, the one Grandpa signed with shaking hands and teary eyes, had been notarized and witnessed, sealed, final. It named me, not Douglas, not Sienna, as heir to the Ellis estate. Not just the property, but everything inside it. The paintings, the ledgers, the watch Grandpa wore every day since 1967, but when someone's declared dead, contesting a will becomes a lot trickier. That's where Valerie came in. She was smart, always had been. She knew how to work inside silence, to push paperwork through dusty corners of bureaucracy while no one was looking. Within 2 months of my death, she and Douglas had already begun listing items from the house as estate liquidations. The Ellis estate antique chest, gone. Grandpa's World War II collection, gone. Even the rosewood library desk I'd spent years restoring, gone, sold. Valerie handled it all with the efficiency of a businesswoman and the subtle venom of a woman who'd waited years to own what never belonged to her. And Sienna? She turned grief into content. On her social media, she posted a 12-part story titled Ellis Estate Restoration, Saying Goodbye to the Past. The photos made my stomach turn, white paint over Grandpa's wood-paneled study, an ugly modern chandelier replacing the antique brass, a selfie in front of the fireplace with the caption, "No more ghosts." I took screenshots of everything, every post, every real estate listing, every email Mr. Brandt forwarded me from anonymous tipsters, lawyers, clerks, even a notary who'd been paid under the table. And when that wasn't enough, I installed eyes of my own. Brandt's former assistant, a young tech-savvy guy named Milo, slipped a hidden camera into the sitting room during a scheduled plumbing inspection. Another went in the study, tucked behind an old clock. And one, my personal favorite, went into the family's new Tesla dashboard. Valerie loved to talk on speakerphone. "With her gone, it's finally clean around here," she told Douglas one night while pulling into the garage. No tension, no competition, no one questioning anything. The irony, of course, was that I wasn't questioning. I was documenting. I was building a case, not for court, but for truth, for exposure. And the more I gathered, the less I felt like the girl they'd erased. I wasn't their orphan. I was their witness. My face stayed out of sight. My voice remained silent. But my presence? It hovered over every lie they told, every fake smile at a charity gala using Grandpa's money, every champagne toast in the garden I used to weed every Sunday morning. Every time Sienna told her friends, "This place always felt like mine," I felt it all, and I let it build. "Why don't you act, Rowan?" Brandt asked one afternoon. "We have enough to start a legal proceeding. You don't have to keep hiding." I stirred my tea and looked out the window. "Because they think the story's over," I said. "They think the ending is written. Let them celebrate. Let them build the stage. And when it's ready," I smiled, "I'll walk in during the standing ovation." They called it a celebration of legacy. The invitation was printed in gold leaf, with a photo of the newly renovated Ellis estate on the front. A big, airy shot of the southern wing, my wing, now painted in blinding white and silver. Underneath, the photo, a tagline read, "Honoring the past, embracing the future." There was no mention of me, of course not. I was the past. Dead and done, according to them. The party was held on a Saturday afternoon, timed perfectly with a magazine feature about modernizing heritage homes. Local realtors came in droves, eager to see what the Ellises had done with the property. Reporters, influencers, old money and new. The whole place smelled like catered canapes and overpriced florals. Jazz spilled from outdoor speakers. Waiters in black vests floated through the hallways with champagne flutes. Sienna was on the front steps, posing for photos in a champagne-colored gown that almost matched her glass. Valerie stood in the center of the main room, giving a tour. "This is the original hearth," she said, placing a manicured hand on the stone. "We kept it as a tribute to Grandpa Ellis. He used to read here every night. He used to read there because I brought him books every night. I watched from the sidewalk for 10 full minutes before stepping through the front gate. My heels crunched against the gravel. Every step forward felt like rewinding time. Not to reclaim it, but to expose it. I wore black. Not mourning black. Commanding black. Fitted blazer. Cropped trousers. A silver pendant I found in Grandpa's top drawer the night before he died. As I entered through the double doors, people turned. Slowly at first, then in waves. The music dimmed, the air shifted, and then the room fell utterly silent. Sienna gasped and dropped her glass. It shattered against the tiled floor. Valerie clutched her clutch like it might deflect a bullet. Douglas stepped out of the study, mouth already forming the beginning of, "But..." I walked to the center of the room. "Like it still belonged to me, like it never stopped. You sold my life," I said quietly. "Like a house you never built." Gasps. A woman near the door whispered. "Isn't she..." A man near the piano muttered, "I thought she died." Valerie blinked rapidly. "Rowan..." "Dead girls don't speak," I said calmly. "But I'm here, so maybe let me finish." I turned to the nearest wall and gestured toward the giant flat screen that hung where Grandpa's bookcase used to be. "Since you're all here to enjoy the legacy," I said, reaching into my bag, "I thought we'd take a moment to see how it was earned." I held up a small black flash drive. Valerie's face drained of color. Douglas took one step forward but stopped himself. Sienna stood frozen, eyes wide, mouth parted like a statue halfway sculpted. "Let's watch what happened," I said, walking toward the TV. While I was dead, I plugged it in. The screen blinked. The room held its breath. Mr. Brandt stepped into the doorway behind me at that exact moment, hands folded, eyes scanning the guests like an usher taking roll. I nodded. Once, the first video began to play. The screen lit up, casting a harsh glow across the room, like a spotlight pulled from the grave. The first clip was grainy, filmed from the dashboard camera in Valerie's Tesla, but her voice rang clear. "With Rowan gone," she said as she backed out of the driveway, "it's finally ours." Douglas's voice responded, faint but smug. "Took long enough. Let's sell it while the market's still hot." There was a pause, the shuffle of papers, then the sound of laughter. "We should have done this years ago." A murmur rippled. Through the room, someone whispered, "Is this real?" Another, "They said she died while traveling, that she drowned." The next slide, a scan of a death certificate, filed under my name, signed by a doctor who didn't exist, stamped by a courthouse that had no record of issuing it, filed 1 month after Rowan left. Mr. Brandt's voice cut in softly, with no death notice, no body, and no legal proceedings, just a signature, bought in cash. Then came Sienna, a video from her private Instagram story, one of those close friends only posts. She was in my bedroom, my old bedroom. She was so obsessed with Grandpa's attention, Sienna giggled into the camera. "Guess who got the house?" The caption, "Dead girl's room, time to redecorate." A collective gasp. The sound of someone choking on their drink. The next screen showed an email thread between Valerie, Douglas, and a man named C. Barnett, a lawyer, shady, struck off the Bar Association a year prior. Subject, estate distribution. Alain. Handle the notary, you two handle the story. She's gone, you're the next of kin, no one will question it. Split 60-40, Valerie wrote. Douglas wants the land. I'll take the art and bank accounts. Someone in the back of the sea. Room took out their phone. Began recording. Then, the final clip. Grainy footage from the study. The old clock behind the desk ticking softly in the background. Douglas leaning over a table. Valerie beside him. A man with glasses holding a pen. A document titled, Last Will. And testament. Just sign and date, the notary said. After this, she never existed on paper. Douglas signed. Valerie smiled. The video ended. Silence, then a cough, then whispers. I stepped forward, not to gloat, not to shout, but just to be seen, fully. I didn't return for revenge, I said, voice low but steady. I came back, for what was always mine. Valerie's hands shook. Douglas turned red. This is nonsense, he barked. She faked this whole thing. She disappeared. We thought... You didn't think, Mr. Brandt cut in smoothly from the doorway. You forged, you stole, and now you'll answer for it. 2 officers stepped forward, crisp and quiet. Douglas Ellis, Valerie Ellis. You are under investigation for fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of legal documents, and identity theft. You are not under arrest at this time, but you are required to appear. Valerie started to cry, real tears this time. Sienna shrank back behind a guest, her perfect party makeup cracking under the heat of exposure. I didn't know, she blurted. I thought she really died. Dad said she was gone. And yet you toured my grave with a glass of wine, I said softly. Douglas clenched his fists. You don't belong here, Rowan. Not anymore. I looked around. The room, at the fireplace I used to curl beside, at the staircase I once painted with Grandpa, at the hallway that still creaked when you stepped on the fourth tile. You're right, I said. I don't belong here. Not with you. Then I turned to the guests, to the people who had come expecting a celebration and instead witnessed a reckoning. But this house, this legacy, this name, they were never yours to keep. And with that, I stepped back, not triumphant, just done, not angry, just free. The grave sat beneath the oldest oak tree on the family plot, just outside the Ellis Estate's west gate. The stone was polished, pristine, still new. Someone had come by recently. The lilies at the base were fresh, white, and perfectly arranged. In loving memory of Rowan Ellis, 1994-2022, may she rest in peace. No quote, no scripture, no warmth, just finality. They buried a version of me here. The obedient daughter, the ghost of disappointment, the girl who tried too hard to be loved by people who only loved control. I stood still in front of it for a long time. I didn't cry. I thought maybe I would. That I'd feel some kind of vindication, some crack in the armor that said, you won. But this wasn't about winning. It was about release. I reached into the pocket of my coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, cream-colored, creased from hours of holding it, rewriting it, pressing it between my palms like a ritual. I knelt down, brushing the lilies aside, and slipped the note beneath them. Then I whispered the words one last time. You buried me to steal what you never earned, but I was never yours to silence. Rest in peace to the girl who needed your love. And I meant every word. The Ellis estate was empty when I returned later that afternoon. Douglas and Valerie were gone, dealing with legal counsel most likely, or hiding behind drawn blinds. Sienna had fled the morning after the party, leaving nothing behind but a spilled bottle of perfume in what used to be my room. The silence inside the house was soft, not cold like before, not weaponized, just quiet. I walked slowly through the hallways. The old staircase creaked the same way it did when I was little. Fourth step, always a bit loose. The scent of cedar still clung to the edge of Grandpa's reading chair, and his photos? Still there, framed in silver and brass, lined across the fireplace mantel. Me and him, shoulder to shoulder, smiling beneath the willow tree in the back garden. A younger me, holding the antique chess set he taught me to play with. His last birthday, the one only I remembered. I ran my fingers along the edges of the frames. Dust clung to my skin, soft and familiar. This was the house they tried to rewrite without me. Now my name was back on the deed, but I didn't come to throw anyone out. I didn't come to scream or stake flags in the floorboards. I came to reclaim what they tried to make me forget, that I was never theirs to erase. I stood in the doorway one last time before leaving, the evening sun casting warm light across the floorboards. For the first time, it didn't feel haunted. Not by me, not by them, just still and enough. The road was empty as I drove away, winding through the hills that used to feel like a prison. The sky had turned to soft gold, the kind of light that makes you believe in tomorrow even if you don't trust today. Soft music played on the radio, nothing dramatic, nothing symbolic. Just simple notes over silence. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a beginning. And as the last bend in the road rose to meet me, I said the words I had waited 3 years to say. Not out loud, not to anyone, but to myself. They tried to end my story, but I rewrote the ending, and this time, it's mine.